Good evening, everybody. If you take a seat, we'll get started. Thanks for coming tonight. This is our monthly meeting for ASCE Oregon section. My name is Frank Shurko. I'm the current president of ASCE. Tonight we have an exciting program that maybe is a little different than our usual technical activities, so hopefully you'll take that in and be able to ask questions and challenge our guests a little bit on, or at least ask them their positions on various things. It doesn't have to be on engineering-related activities. At your place, you'll have some propaganda. So let me at least tell you what you have at your seat. You know, we keep saying at various meetings that we'd like folks to get involved in various parts of ASCE. So the half-page item, you're welcome to take these home. This is a list of things that we'd like you to get involved in and be part of, various committees or other things that we have going. And you can get involved either as a prospective chairperson or as a member of various committees that we have planned. You'll notice as you checked in, we also had, for the first time, our Centennial ASCE mugs. So those are $10, and the net proceeds go entirely to the scholarship fund for ASCE. Make great holiday or Christmas gifts, so we hope you take advantage of those. And you can buy those after tonight. It's posted on our website, so I won't go through all the details, but there's a supply here in Portland after tonight, and there's a supply down in Corvallis. The other piece of propaganda you have at your sheet is from my organization, OSU, and we are looking for mentors for our capstone project. So if you want to get involved and mentor one 5-member student team who's working on their senior design project, there's some details here about what the project is and how you can get involved. So those of you who want to give up essentially 1 hour a week approximately for the next couple of months, you're welcome to become involved, and that's a way to help some students with kind of a different point of view from your perspective. Be happy to answer any questions after the meeting on either of those items. We also were, the board tonight got a presentation by Kent Hugh, and he's part of not only his private consulting firm, but also the Oregon Earthquake Advisory Board or Commission, and they're about to start a major effort in Oregon having to do with resilient infrastructure and what to do with tsunami response and critical infrastructure linkages. It'll take about 12 to 14 months, and he asked for ASCE support. So the board gave him that support to become essentially a co-sponsor of those efforts, to provide people to work on 7 task groups to communicate with our members and provide a standing subcommittee within ASCE to coordinate some of those activities. So if you're interested in being part of an earthquake or tsunami or critical resilient infrastructure process, come and see me after the meeting and we'll get you involved. There's an early meeting in January, at the end of January, at the Port of Portland, where this whole thing will be kicked off. In our next meeting, Chris, say it. Okay. And it'll be in January, the 3rd Tuesday or something. So, okay. So look on the website. We have a variety of meetings coming up, all of which we think are exciting and things that will provide you with some entertainment and information. So why don't you go ahead and finish your dinners, and then after that, Chris will come up and sort of kick off the evening's guests, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I thought.
How would anybody, not just you, but anybody that's being elected, how would they, you're gonna go in not just for this year, or next year, I should say. Probably the case next year. Yeah. Yeah. Other than trying to.
They sold them, they didn't own the Still be in the house.
Yeah.
They sold
They
it.
would come in and get her back in here, yeah, you know,
Do nothing.
yeah.
Especially when you're in a minority party. So I think, quite frankly, and it's like,
State agents, had to convince the guy so fast. Was
not the case.
Well, Suzanne, yeah, so.
Have some clout. Does that make sense?
Couldn't find right. Education law. You couldn't have a complicated violent process or refund. And it already had to be a thing.
What's that got to do with me?
It's already refunded. Actually,
I have to do it.
and everybody shook their heads. And we warned them last week. Anybody's jumping jobs.
So he knows I'm a pragmatist, which I think is the best type of person to give a discussion. So that's why I'm someone four truck drivers take the first message, which means
Subcommittee yesterday.
you don't create any more, and it doesn't create any professional. So no engineer, no So I got Mark's had an issue about all kinds of statements of money. They said he's like,
You think they're strongly evangelical?
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying, we're talking about the concern of folks in education or even when it comes to what's going down, funding trees going down. Leadership
There's a lot of objectives, but
or in business challenges.
I don't know.
Leadership something that was kind of
I don't know what they are, that's what I'm trying to do.
I was kind of pleasantly surprised by it. Sort of unanimous agreement basically changing the way the formula.
What do they have to try?
Unanimous agreement on like.
I see them as being
Vehicle miles around.
largely
You
favored
know, we do,
of less
the state is good, not to see that yeah, it seems like there was at least some folks coming in mind. There's all kinds of legislators. Now, in my neck of the woods, I work for Cornilles now. DC is a much scarier place to have something. We've been banging the ground for a while. Fans.
Yeah, well, that's
opposed to small troops that are I think there are a lot of Republicans that don't mind.
Those same guys that want to do that, they won't touch anything
People
else.
that
Like, you know,
General Electric.
Why don't y'all continue eating? I'm going to start with my introductory comments. We promised each speaker today 45 minutes, so I really got to get this going because the next speaker is going to be here about 8:15 or so. So I've got some thoughts here. You know, 98% of the adults in this country are decent, hardworking, honest Americans. It's the other 2% that get all the publicity. But then we elected them, didn't we? Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Oregon Society of Americans. Oregon section of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Tonight, our attention turns to politics. Civil engineers work in a very public arena. Much of our work is a result of a public and political process. Last month, there was an election in Tillamook County. The voters were asked to vote on a property tax levy that would finance an improvement in county roads. The levy was voted down. It was a close election. The county's Director of Public Works is facing some very difficult decisions. These alternatives include turning asphalt roads to gravel and dealing with the shutdown of county roads. The shutdowns will occur when some of the 3,000 culverts that are required to handle 9 inches of rain that they get in Tillamook County fail. And the culvert failures will result in the collapse of roadways, the roads will close down, and it'll open up when the county crews get around to fixing that culvert that failed. And you know what? Failures always seem to happen at the most inconvenient times, usually in times of significant weather events. So what's the lesson that's to be taken away from that election? Well, first, it represents a referendum on the expenditure of infrastructure dollars. The message is the public does not believe that the infrastructure is in a poor shape as those who are responsible for its maintenance believe it to be. Perhaps the standards that we've developed over the last 25 years are more than what the public wants today. If most folks can get from where they are to where they want to be with a minimum amount of inconvenience, the possibility of infrastructure not serving them is not real. They don't feel it. Secondly, the successful efforts of the infrastructure maintenance community to keep things going during natural events, such as storms and blizzards, belies the notion that infrastructure needs replacement. When you get a blizzard or you get a storm, guess what? Mostly you can get around. It is only when there's a catastrophic shutdown, such as the bridge in Minnesota or the bridge in Kentucky, the public becomes aware of an acute need, and then usually becomes a high-dollar, rapid replacement. Thirdly, infrastructure is often constructed as a result of compromises that are arrived at during a consensus process. This cuts down on the credibility and results in headlines like the bridge to nowhere or projects running over budget. Whether it's a streetcar line to Lake Oswego or a maintenance facility for a water bureau, projects should be thoroughly vetted for efficiency and cost. The message from the voter is that wholesale reconstruction is not what the public believes its limited funds should be spent on. Instead, perhaps strategic improvements on specific locations may be more palatable to cash-strapped Oregonians that now appear to be recovering from one of the worst recessions in 40 years. What this also means is that civil engineers need to engage in the political process. We are the experts. We make a difference. You hear a lot of criticism of our political system, but I can tell you, as we are meeting here, there are movements going on around the world that seek to adopt what we already have. We should not squander this opportunity. Tonight, we and you and I get to participate firsthand in the political process by engaging the two candidates who are seeking election in Oregon's 1st Congressional District. One of these two will be going to Washington and represent our interests at the national stage. Rob Cornilles, the Republican candidate, and Susan Bonamici, the Democratic candidate, have agreed to speak with us tonight. I'm going to let each of these candidates introduce themselves. First, please welcome Rob Cornilles.
Good evening. Rob Cornilles is my name, and I really appreciate the chance to visit with you, members of the ASCE. And I thought it would be helpful, based on that introduction, to give you a little bit of my background and share with you the kind of the things that have helped shape my ideas and my thoughts, and certainly my perspective as it relates to, I think, the issues that are important to you. To begin, I'm a native Oregonian. I was born here in Multnomah County. I was raised in Washington County, as well as Yamhill County. And for those of you who know the 1st Congressional District, those 3 counties are within that district, in addition to Clatsop and Columbia counties. So, having been born here 47 years ago, raised here, met my high school sweetheart here in this district, across the river, of course, I'm speaking, as well as raised our family in the city of Tualatin, where we've lived for the last 19 years, as well as built a business in the city of Tualatin, which we started 16 years ago. Our kids, 3 boys, 2 in college, 1 in high school, have all gone through the public school system in the Tiger Tualatin School District. And quite admittedly, as I started my business 16 years ago, I had no thought, premonition, that someday I'd actually be running for U.S. Congress. It was not a career aspiration of mine. I'll tell you what my aspiration was. It was to grow a business that would provide valuable services to people in the industry in which I was working at the time, and still continue to work. That industry is the sports business. And let me be more specific. I don't work at Nike. I don't service a Nike or a Columbia Sportswear or those types of sports companies or even agencies. What I do at GameFace, and you can certainly learn more about my business through the literature that you have here tonight and the website that we've set up. GameFace is involved in advising primarily professional sports franchises on best business practices. And when we talk about best business practices, I'm not referring to how to sign the top player, because we don't deal with player issues whatsoever. We deal with business issues. How to grow a fan base, how to take care of that fan base so that they want to come to your stadium or arena, wherever it may be located, however your team may be playing, whatever kind of history you may have, good or bad or ugly. And how you can also take care of those corporate partners, and all facets of your business. And I started in this industry many years ago, actually in Los Angeles, where I lived with my wife for a short time, about 6 years. And at that time, I got my first foray into sports by working for a professional basketball team, the Los Angeles Clippers. And this is, it's a great team, at least for the players who play on the team and their families, but for the market in general, there was never any love for the Los Angeles Clippers. And the reason for this is that we were, at face value, a very poor franchise, played in a tough part of town, in one of the oldest arenas in the NBA, and our team was lousy. And long story short, I was asked to help to promote and market this particular club and bring more people into the building. Not on a one-time basis, not on a one-off, but rather on a consistent basis. And this was a challenge, as you might imagine, but long story short, we had some success. And that success spawned the business, because our success was being noticed and recognized by other teams in our league. And eventually, I started to get phone calls, inquiries from other franchises saying, hey, how are you doing that in South Central Los Angeles for a really bad team? And we began to explain it, and then it led to some consulting, moving back to Oregon, starting up my own practice in 1995, frankly out of a spare bedroom in our Tualatin home. And I have figured now, as I've thought a lot about my business background and the experience that I've had, if I could successfully market the LA Clippers, I can't wait to see what I could do with Northwest Oregon. Because Northwest Oregon has a lot greater assets, potential, certainly existing strengths than I had when I started my professional career. Now, GameFace has worked with about 400 franchises around the country, and in Canada, and in Europe. And these franchises are some household names. The world champion St. Louis Cardinals, the Boston Celtics, the San Francisco Giants, the New York Mets, the Chicago Bulls, these types of franchises. Yes, we work with the Trailblazers and the Timbers, and about 390 some odd other franchises and college athletic departments. And all those years, the last 16 years, we've been fortunate to employ about 60 people in that time, and provided, I think, some very valuable services to our industry, so much so that these name brands, when they had particular interests, or more specifically challenges within certain parts of their business, they would call all the way to Tualatin, Oregon to get answers. Even though, admittedly, they can go anywhere within a 30-mile radius of their stadium or arena and probably find some pretty smart people to help them. And as I was doing this, building this business, I will tell you, politically speaking, I was watching what was happening through my own congressional representation, and I was a little disenchanted, disappointed, thinking, certainly we can do better. Now, what do I mean by do better? I believe, with all apologies to those of you who live in this district, and I know we have a representative from Congressman Blumenauer here with us tonight, and those of you who may live in the 5th District, Congressman Schrader's district, I certainly believe that the 1st District of Oregon is the best. And why do I think it's the best? Because it's really the economic hub of Oregon. As that district goes, so goes our state economically. And yet, we have, over the last several years, we haven't really had a champion in Congress. We haven't had someone who's pushed us in front of the apron and said, look at these fantastic products, services, look at these innovators, look at these entrepreneurs, these small businesses, look at these workers who produce such great products, and help us to grow the economy here through that type of, frankly, promotion. And so in 2009, I decided that, you know what, I'm tired of sitting on the couch and throwing my shoe at the TV. I'm tired of complaining that the interests of small businesses are not being represented properly in this district, let alone the country as a whole. I'm tired of the fact that we have continually in Oregon, 15 straight years, an unemployment rate above the national average. I'm tired that we're in the top tier of homelessness, hunger for our children, foreclosures for our mortgages. We got to do better than this. We are better than this. And so that's when I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And when I told my wife, who I've been married to now for 25 and a half years, when I told her at that time what I was thinking of doing, she, who's known me since we were freshmen in high school, she said, where did that come from? Because, as I said, it was never part of my business plan. But it's part of what I think we have to do. I think if people like you and I don't step out of our comfort zones, and even in some cases step away from that which we know best, and because we've done it well, creating jobs, and try to lend whatever talents, whatever skills, whatever experience we think could benefit our communities, if we don't, we're going to have more of the same. And by recent polls, I don't think more of the same is what the American people are looking for, if you consider how we look at Congress today. Congress is broken. Congress isn't working. And as a result, we're not working to the extent we should be. Now, I don't believe that Congress creates jobs. I believe Congress creates, if you will, to pardon a construction analogy, they create the avenue for the private sector to create jobs on a long-standing basis. Sure, government can create jobs, some of them temporary, some of them seasonal, but if we don't have a strong private sector building the tax base, then there's not going to be the funds necessary for government programs and government services and construction projects and the like. So we have to have a strong private sector in this country again. And a little over a week ago, across the river downtown, I was invited, along with my fellow candidate, who you'll hear from later tonight, to share our ideas for growing jobs. And she couldn't make it, even though it had been on both of our calendars for 60 days. And I came and I spoke to 100 business leaders in the Portland region, and I said, here's what I think we have to do to be serious about job creation, and here's what we do back in Congress to benefit you. Because that's what it's all about. So let me suggest to you what the 3 pillars are, I think, are of job creation today. And David, my seat partner over there in the back, was asking me, what are you going to do to create jobs? Here they are, David. These are for you, baby. Number 1, we have to create a simpler, more predictable, fairer tax code. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means right now, the only people probably, well, I would ask this question, who in this room knows what your tax rate is going to be a year from now? Who knows with certainty what tax bracket you're going to be in a year from now? If you were truthful, nobody in this room would raise their hand. Because the fact is, nobody knows. We're still guessing. We're conjecturing what Congress is going to do. And here's the sad fact. Congress doesn't even know what our tax code is going to look like 12 months from now. Now, they're real good at throwing, piecemeal solutions on the table. They're real good at putting Band-Aids on the problem. But I believe what we have to do is create certainty in the marketplace so that small businesses have confidence and understand what the ramifications are of investing, hiring again, innovating, so that they will then take the necessary steps to bring more people into their operation, thereby creating jobs. Right now, one of the things that's preventing a simplification and more predictability in the tax code, quite frankly, is that it's largely unfair because it only favors mega corporations. Not in all cases, but in most. There are many mega corporations in our country right now who actually have a tax benefit from our current code. They make money off it. One common example, General Electric, last year made $14.1 billion in profits worldwide, yet in this country they paid 0 federal income taxes. Tell me how that's fair. Meanwhile, small businesses in Oregon are stuck with a tax bill, not to mention the middle class. And they're not the only company. Some of you might have Verizon. You want to know how Verizon affords those expensive commercials to woo your business? Because they made a profit off the tax code last year. I don't think that's right. These are called loopholes, as I said. And the good news about simplifying and making a more predictable tax code is that, contrary to what you might hear, there is bipartisan support for this. Unfortunately, we don't have enough congressional courage to get it done. Why? Because we've got an election season coming upon us now. But I believe if you look at the Simpson-Bowles Commission, which submitted their report to the president a year ago this month, an 8-month bipartisan panel that said, you know what, we have to eliminate tax loopholes, we need to simplify, we need to give more certainty in the marketplace. If you will incorporate some of the recommendations they've made, we would see, I think, some real traction in the economy right now. But what happened? Politics got in the way. The president and the Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, took those recommendations and stuck them in their drawer. And for the entire year 2011, it's been an afterthought, a distant memory. And we're suffering the consequences of it back home. The super committee, kind of the next iteration of that Bowles-Simpson commission, they weren't so super after all, were they? Because of the partisan gridlock that is frankly strangling our economy. Now, after you create, and it's, by the way, I must say, this is not a new idea. And it's not impossible, even though it feels like it right now in today's climate back in Washington, D.C. The reason why I say it's not impossible is because you don't have to go too far back, 1997, when you had a Democrat president and a Republican Congress who actually came together and said, you know what, we got to create a better tax system. And what was the result? We balanced the budget, we had a surplus, and unemployment was around 4%. People can work together. But somewhere along the lines, over the last 15 years or so, something's gone wrong. And I don't believe putting the same type of people in Congress year after year is going to fix the problem. That's the definition of insanity, as you know. The second solution is that we have to recognize that Oregon does a lot of things well that the rest of the country doesn't, and therefore we need to make our products and services more available to the rest of the country, and more specifically the world marketplace. Yes, I'm talking about trade. I'm talking specifically about the First District, mind you. Look at our largest employers in the First District. Intel, soon to be 16,000 employees. 100% of those employees depend on international business for them to be successful. 80% of Intel's revenue comes overseas, ladies and gentlemen. Nike, Columbia Sportswear, Tektronix, these stalwart businesses that we have in the First District. The Portland Business Alliance recently, earlier this year, reported that 474,000 Oregon jobs are tied to international trade. And the Hoover, it's not the Hoover Institution, I just lost the name, another respected organization, bipartisan organization in Washington, D.C., recently found that 268,000 jobs in the Portland region alone rely on international business. So anyone who doesn't understand that trade built this state and that our district in the first is dependent on it is someone who, in my opinion, isn't qualified to represent this district. After all, look at the name of our largest city, Portland. And we have ports in St. Helens and Astoria. We're on the Pacific Rim where 40% of the world's population exists. We have 2 navigable rivers bordering this district. We have such an eclectic district with high tech in Washington County. We've got timber in Columbia County, timber products. We've got fisheries on the coast in Clatsop. We've got the business sector of Oregon right here in Portland. We've got nurseries and wineries and tourism in Yamhill County. And we don't understand that the world wants these products? Of course they do. And obviously, I'm not talking about shipping jobs. I'm talking about shipping products and services. One quick example. Well, I'll give you 2. China, more than $3 billion in trade with our state this year. South Korea, $1 billion. Those are just 2 countries. So we need a congressman that not only understands this principle, and I was the only one in the primary who said I support the free trade agreements that the president was pushing. Yes, I stood next to President Obama and said these are the right things to do for Oregon jobs. And finally, they got it through the president's office and the Congress, and now those are part of our plan. It's the free trade agreements with Korea, Colombia, and Panama. Our big one, obviously, is Korea. Unfortunately, my opponent didn't make up her mind until last Friday that that was a good trade agreement, even though it's been being discussed for 4 or 5 years. And as a representative or a state senator in Beaverton, you'd think she would know a little bit about how important trade is to her state Senate seat. We can't have finger in the wind on this stuff if we're serious about job creation. We need to be bold. We need to be bipartisan. And we need to hold our trade partners accountable for these agreements that they've signed. The third thing that we have to do in order to spur economic growth and to give you, the job creators, more confidence is we in Congress have to be more fiscally responsible. We do this through, over time, phasing in a balanced budget. We have it in the state of Oregon. You have it in your business, otherwise you go out of business. You probably have it in your homes. Otherwise you get some nasty grams from your credit card company. But we don't have it in the U.S. Congress. We don't have a balanced budget amendment. Now, let me be clear. I am not proposing that we instigate a balanced budget amendment immediately, overnight. First of all, that's an impractical suggestion, because you'd have to have the states ratify it in order for it to become an amendment to our Constitution, and that takes time. But here's the bigger reason. If you mandated a balanced budget today, when we're writing a $1.3 trillion deficit in 2011, the second highest deficit in our country's history, the first, by the way, was 2009, and the third was 2010. If you were to do that right now, the only way you could comply is to raise taxes dramatically during a tough time in our country's history, and at the same time probably reduce services drastically. Entitlements to those people who need it most and who have depended on it and who have earned it, Medicare, Social Security, not to mention national security. So it's unrealistic, and I would say no to my own party who's trying to pass a balanced budget amendment and instigate it immediately. It's impractical. It's not the right thing to do. But if we could phase it in, let's say 8 years down the road, 10 years down the road, say that's the date we need to have it in place, then we as a society, we as an economy, we could plan for that. The government could get their house in order in that period without throwing everybody into a bucket of ice water and shocking the economic system. I think you'd get good certainty and predictability, and it would build confidence in Americans that our government is getting their house in order. Not to mention those who would lend us money. These are the three pillars to me of job creation, and I want to say something that's very important. These three ideas have bipartisan support. Why is that important? Because you're going to hear, maybe through this campaign, maybe through other people running for this office, you're going to hear ideas of how to grow the economy. But the question you've got to ask them as a voter is, great idea, how likely is it that the other